My 70th birthday arrived quietly, not the gentle, peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that echoes in a house that's been empty far too long. No calls, no messages, not a single happy birthday dad from the son I had been sending $750 a week to, every week, for 3 years. You would think 70 years on this earth prepares you for disappointment, but nothing prepares you for silence, especially when it comes from the child you raised. The next morning, Ethan walked into my home as if nothing had happened. No hug, no smile, no, "How was your birthday, Dad?" He didn't even take off his coat. The cuffs of his leather shoes were still dusted with glitter from whatever party he'd stumbled out of. He stood in my kitchen and said in the flat tone of someone reviewing numbers on a spreadsheet, "You're still getting the money we send, right? Madison just wants to make sure everything's okay. Okay." The word rolled around my mind like a loose screw. I looked at him long and slow, not with anger, not with disbelief, but with the sudden realization that the boy I once carried on my shoulders was gone. Where a son used to stand, a stranger stood now, a stranger who had learned to measure love in cash deposits. "I haven't seen $1 in 3 months," I said. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear like a knife laid gently on a table. The room froze. Not because Ethan was shocked, but because Madison had just stepped in behind him. She didn't bother closing the door. She didn't greet me. She didn't even pretend to care. Madison simply stood there, framed by the doorway, like a poster for a life she wanted people to believe she lived, cream coat draped perfectly, hair curled to perfection, perfume spilling into my kitchen like a fog of expensive lies. She glanced at me, a single sharp, dismissive sweep of her eyes, and let out a soft, mocking laugh. "Henry, you must be confused." Confused. I worked 36 years for USPS, sorting mail, tracking numbers, matching signatures, handling federal documents. Confusion was not in my job description, so I said nothing. I simply watched. And in the quiet that followed, 2 truths settled into me like cold winter air. They genuinely believed age had made me blind. 2, they didn't know that this very moment was the moment I began tearing down the world they built on my back. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I didn't raise my voice. I just smiled, a small, almost invisible smile, the kind that made Madison shift uncomfortably. Because after 70 years of living, I've learned one thing: people who underestimate you never see the storm coming. If you're still here with me, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment is a voice for the fathers who were forgotten. And if this story hits you even a little, hit. Like so others can hear what comes next. Now let's go back to the night it all began. October 11th, 2025. Denver air was sharp with early fall cold. The kind of cold that slips under your collar even when you think you're dressed warm enough. Downtown lights shimmered against the sidewalks. Timberline Grill sat tucked beneath an old brick building, warm lights glowing behind its windows. I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. Not because I'm overeager, but because 36 years at USPS trained me well. Early is prepared. Late is irresponsible. 3 days earlier, Ethan had called me. "Dad, Sunday night, 7 p.m. We'll all be there. I promise." I believed him. Because that's what fathers do. We believe our children, even when we shouldn't. I wore the Manchester wool coat my wife bought for me in 1992, a little worn but still dignified. I thought Ethan might appreciate the effort. I took my seat at the table near the window. The chair across from me sat empty. So did the 2 beside it. 6:10, 6:20, 6:25. I checked my phone. Nothing. At the next table, a family celebrated a little boy's birthday. Cake, candles, confetti popping like soft fireworks. The boy laughed a bright, innocent sound, and it cut deeper than anything Ethan had ever said to me. 6:30. I called him. He answered on the second ring. But before he said a word, I heard everything. Music thumping so loud it rattled the phone. Glasses clinking. Someone shouting, "Who wants another round?" Then silence. Ethan must have stepped away from the group. "Ethan," I said, "are you on your way?" A beat. Then Madison's voice sliced through the line like a shard of ice. Your age means nothing to us. He's 70, not dying. He can eat alone." She didn't whisper. She didn't soften it. She didn't pretend. Ethan sighed the kind of sigh that says, "You're bothering me. Dad, we're busy. Just eat without us. We'll do another night." Another night. As if birthdays were recyclable. As if I were. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I just hung up. Slow. Final. Because in that moment I realized something painful and simple. They didn't forget me. They dismissed me. I stood up, placed a few dollars for the water. The young waiter leaned toward me gently. "Happy birthday, sir." I nodded, walked out into the cold. Didn't close my coat. Didn't shield myself. I let the cold hit me. I needed it. When people believe they no longer need you, I whispered, they reveal who they truly are. Back home, I didn't turn on the TV. Didn't sit down. Didn't even take off my coat. I went straight to the drawer beneath the microwave. Pulled out my brown leather notebook, a habit from USPS. If it's important, you write it down. Nothing exists without a record. Page 1. October 2022. First $750 transfer. $750. $750, $750. Page after page. Month after month. I flipped to September 2025. Blank. October 2025. Blank. 3 months. No deposits. No explanations. Because they never planned to send anything again. I picked up my pen and wrote October 12th, 2025. Stop. No emphasis. No exclamation point. No anger. Just a decision. And that decision changed everything. I closed the notebook and looked at my reflection in the kitchen glass, a 70-year-old man standing straight, eyes clear, and finally free from the illusion that his son still needed him. "All right," I whispered. "My turn now." Denver fell into silence outside. And in that silence, I began rebuilding myself and preparing to destroy everything their greed had built. I remember exactly when things first shifted, not in 2025 when everything finally collapsed, but back in October of 2022. Denver was deep in autumn then. Yellow leaves covered the sidewalks like letters that had been mailed too late to matter. I was sweeping my front yard when my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. His voice shook the first time in years he'd sounded like a scared little boy instead of a grown man. "Dad, I got laid off." I stopped sweeping, leaned my weight against the wooden handle of the broom, listened to every uneven breath coming through the line. His company was downsizing, 14 people from his department gone. Madison was panicking. The mortgage was due. The car needed repairs. The kids' tuition had just hit. They had no emergency fund, no savings, no backup plan. And then came the sentence that opened a door I should never have stepped through, Dad. We just need some help. For a little while. A little while. Those 3 words were a quiet trap, and I walked right in without even realizing the door had closed behind me. That night I sent him $750. No hesitation, no calculation, no second thoughts. I wrote it into my notebook. October 2022. Ethan laid off, start support. Kindness is simple that way. You help the people you love. You don't count the cost. You don't imagine that one day it might cost you yourself. The first weeks of fall 2022 passed gently. Madison called me often then. Her voice was coated in sweetness like frosting on a cake. Henry, we're so grateful. Really, thank you. I wanted to believe her, and I did. But that sweetness lasted exactly 2 months. By December, her tone changed. Henry, did you send it today? Henry, this week's transfer hasn't come through. Henry, we're waiting. The shift was so fast it left me blinking. My name no longer sounded like a father's name in her mouth. It sounded like the name of a bank teller she was tired of talking to. That was when I learned something important. People don't change their nature. They just remove the mask once they think you can't walk away. Winter 2022 into early 2023, Ethan said he was job hunting. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. Then came a morning in mid-January. I called him at 10:30 a.m. to ask how his interview had gone. He didn't answer. At noon, my bank sent a notification, withdrawal $80. The iron bar to 26 a.m. 10:26 a.m. The exact time he told me he was getting ready for the interview. I stared at the screen, feeling something inside me settle, not anger, not shock, just clarity. He wasn't interviewing. He was drinking. And I, a 67-year-old retired mailman, was paying for my son's morning whiskey. I didn't call him back. I didn't confront him. I just opened my notebook and wrote Ethan 10:26 a.m. bar. A cold line. A small crack in the foundation. But cracks spread. March 2023. Madison opened a secondary credit account linked to Ethan's card. I didn't know until I saw the activity. Sephora $168, Nordstrom $340, Kate Spade $260, Lululemon $190. I asked her about it. She didn't pretend, didn't apologize, didn't even soften her voice. She smirked and said, "Henry, these are just essentials. A woman needs to take care of herself, doesn't she?" I didn't respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because I was studying her. She didn't see this as indulgence. She saw it as entitlement, her right to use my money. Ethan stood beside her, eyes down like a boy caught stealing cookies. But it wasn't guilt. It was resignation. And resignation destroys families faster than cruelty ever could. That year I began missing important things in my own life. My knee checkup. The doctor had told me after my 2019 replacement that routine evaluations were necessary. I rescheduled, then rescheduled again, and again, until the clinic called 3 times and I realized I had put my son's comfort above my own health. I told the doctor. My family's going through something. He studied me quietly, then said, "Mr. Walker, every struggle has a price." I forced a laugh, pretended not to understand, but I did. I understood perfectly. Then came May 2023. Spring in Denver is almost too beautiful, sunlight so bright, it feels unreal, cottonwood seeds drifting like soft snow. I received my bank statement on one of those clear afternoons. I flipped through it casually until one charge made me freeze: spring break trip, resort fee, $1,980. Date April 14th, 2023. Location Cancun, Mexico. Cancun, spring break. While I was postponing my medical appointments, while I ate canned soup to stretch my own budget, while I sent $750 every week without fail. Ethan and his family were tanning by a pool in Mexico, sipping turquoise cocktails, smiling for photos, and posting them on social media, photos I later found hidden behind a close friends only filter. They were enjoying a vacation on my dime. I sat down, held the statement so tightly the paper shook. Not because of the money, but because of the lie. Because I remembered exactly what Ethan told me that week: Dad, Madison's sick. We're staying home with the kids. This season's rough, we can't travel. He said it calmly, smoothly, effortlessly. I set the statement on the table, looked at it long and hard, like staring at the first flames of a fire I didn't start, but might have to finish. That was the moment kindness turned into obligation, and obligation turned into expectation, and expectation turned into a belief that I owed them something, that my wallet was theirs, that my time was theirs, that my life was theirs. That evening, for the first time since 2022, I didn't send the weekly transfer. I opened my notebook, placed my hand on this page where it all started. October 2022, Ethan layoff, start support. And I whispered, it's time to wake up. They don't need saving. They need consequences. I closed the notebook, and for the first time in a long time, I let my bank account stay silent. Thanksgiving of 2023 arrived with Denver's signature kind of cold, the kind that doesn't just brush against your skin, but enters your bones and stays there, quiet and stubborn, like an old grief. The sky was a pale, washed-out blue, the kind of sky that looks tired before the day even starts. I began preparing the Thanksgiving table early that morning, not because I expected anyone to walk through my door, but because for the past 40 years, this was what I did. Habit can feel a lot like hope, even when you no longer believe in anything. The turkey went into the oven just past 9 a.m. I rubbed it with salt, pepper, a little paprika, the way Laura used to do, slowly, like a small ritual meant to steady the heart. I peeled the potatoes, sliced the carrots, let cinnamon simmer in a small pot so the house smelled warm, even if the feeling didn't quite reach my chest. The radio played old classic songs people my age know by heart. The kind of songs that used to fill our home when Ethan was still small enough to sit on the counter with flour on his cheeks. I set the table, the wooden table that had been with us since 1996, the one Laura insisted on getting, even though it was too big for our dining room. Someday, the family will grow into it, she said. 2 large plates for Ethan and Madison, 2 smaller ones for Noah and Sophie. I folded the napkins into red leaf shapes, the shape Laura always loved. She used to say it made the table feel like a Norman Rockwell painting. Today, the table felt more like a museum exhibit dedicated to a life that didn't exist anymore. Each napkin I placed felt like laying down a memory, not vibrant, not alive, but faded around the edges. Around noon, a text came through from Ethan. Dad, we're still figuring out the timing. We'll text later. I stared at the screen, didn't reply. When you've lived more than 7 decades, you learn to hear the truth inside the things people don't say. Later doesn't mean later. It means never. By 6 p.m., the turkey was golden. The air was thick with warmth, but warmth feels different when the house is empty. The radio played Home for the Holidays. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then my phone buzzed again. A single message. We're at Madison's sister's place. 7 words. No apology. No explanation. Just a simple declaration that I had been replaced quietly, effortlessly. I looked at the dinner table again. 4 untouched plates. 4 carefully folded napkins. 4 glasses already poured. I didn't feel anger. Didn't feel heartbreak either. What I felt was something quieter, a hollowing out like someone had scooped the inside of me and left a space where certainty used to live. Noah and Sophie, the grandkids who once ran through my hallway every Thanksgiving, giggling, leaving little handprints everywhere, begging to help me baste the turkey. They didn't come either. I didn't text Ethan. Didn't ask why. Some questions stop being questions once the truth is already standing in the doorway looking at you. I turned off the oven, covered the dishes with foil, then went to the kitchen drawer to get the big container. Not because I planned to store leftovers, because I knew where the food needed to go. Helen lived next door, 82, widowed since 2008. Her daughter lived in Florida and called twice a year, birthday and Christmas. Every Thanksgiving I brought her a plate. This year, I brought the whole dinner. I knocked twice. Helen opened the door. She smelled faintly of peppermint and lemon dish soap, a scent that reminded me of community potlucks and old churches. Her eyes widened the moment she saw the food. "Henry, what happened? Where's your family?" I let out a quiet laugh. Not bitter, not pained, just the kind of laugh that slips out when you finally understand something you wish you didn't. "Would you like to share dinner with me? Seems I made too much for just one." Helen didn't speak for a moment. She just looked at me long and soft, the way older people look when they see a story behind your eyes. Then she smiled. "Come in, Henry. It's warm in here." Her home was small but cozy. Knitted blankets on the couch. A photo of her and her late husband on the mantel. A football game playing softly on TV, just background noise, the kind people put on so their loneliness doesn't echo. We ate together, slowly, gratefully. She told me about the year her husband fixed a car engine in their living room because the garage was too cold. I told her about delivering mail during the blizzard of '87 when the snow was up to my thighs. We didn't talk about Ethan. Didn't talk about being alone. Older people don't always need words to understand each other's wounds. Sometimes the most human thing you can do is sit with someone and let the night pass. Around 9:50 p.m., I walked home. The cold felt sharper now, but it didn't sting the way it usually did. The house was dark when I returned. The table still set like a ghost of the dinner that never happened. I took off my coat, rolled up my sleeves, was about to put the food away when my phone rang. 10:00 p.m. The caller ID Madison. I stared at the name glowing on the screen. Then I answered. Noise burst through the speaker, music so loud it rattled people shouting, glasses, clinking, women laughing high and empty. Madison's voice cut through it. "Henry, happy Thanksgiving." Her laugh was sharp, the kind that isn't joy, but something more like mockery. I didn't respond, just held the phone close and listened. She kept talking, her words slurred. "Ethan said I should call you so you won't be lonely. But we are having so much fun." In the background, Ethan's voice came through, muffled. "Madison, stop! Give the phone back." But she didn't stop. She only got louder, as if she wanted her voice to fill my empty house. "Oh, come on. It's Thanksgiving, he'll survive. As if loneliness were a mild inconvenience. as if I were a chore they were tired of performing. I still didn't speak, and then finally, quietly, I said, "Madison, if you think I'm alone tonight, you're wrong." Silence. Sharp. Instant. Cutting through the noise like a blade. "What?" Her voice lost its drunken shine. I didn't explain. Didn't feed her curiosity. I didn't owe her anything. I simply said nothing and ended the call. Clean. Simple. Final. I looked around the house, at the untouched plates, at the napkins folded like red leaves, at the half-left turkey. But the emptiness no longer felt like a wound. It felt like clarity. I realized something that night. Something quiet but powerful. Loneliness doesn't destroy you. It's the lies, the excuses, the promises made and broken so casually that begin to rot the core of who you are. Thanksgiving of 2023 was the first time my family left me behind. But it was also the first time I didn't feel abandoned. It was the night I understood that being alone is not the same as being forgotten, and sometimes it's the only way to see the truth. I stood in the kitchen, turned off the lights, and whispered into the dark. "All right. I've seen enough." The year 2024 arrived with the same pale gray that always settles over Denver during its long winters. Bare branches, salt-stained roads, and an air so heavy it felt like you had to push your way through it every time you stepped outside. But even that cold couldn't compete with the cold I felt looking through my own bank statements. Ever since Christmas Day, I'd spent my evenings gathering evidence. Not because I knew exactly what I would do with it, and not because I had a plan waiting in the shadows. I did it because there needed to be a record. 36 years with USPS had taught me 3 things: timestamps don't lie, data doesn't disappear, and the truth always leaves a trail. Then one morning in late January 2024, I opened my laptop, checked my email, and froze. Not metaphorically. I mean literally, like someone had dumped a bucket of ice water down my spine. An email subject line read, "Your digital marketing service. Monthly subscription renewal, $199. My name, Henry Walker, billing address, Ethan's house payment method. A secondary card linked to my account, one I had never opened. Digital marketing service. I'm 70 years old. I barely know what a handle is on social media. The only platform I'm fluent in is the postal system." My hands tightened on the mouse as I opened the account details. The subscription had started in March 2023 while I was paying for Ethan's financial hardship, while I was covering their mortgage, while I was skipping medical appointments to save money. They had been running Madison's online business in my name. I stared at the screen, the breath leaving my lungs, as if someone had struck me. Not pain, just a hollow, bottomless shock. Then I saw the line that made my stomach twist, registered with SSN ending in 41. My social security number. My identity. My name tied to a service I'd never used for income I never earned. Madison hadn't just used my money. They'd used me. I called Ethan, not to ask, not to fight. I wanted to hear his voice when he lied. He answered after the second ring. "Dad, why are you calling this early?" I kept my voice even, each word weighed and deliberate like stones placed one by one. "Ethan, why is this marketing account registered under my name?" He let out a short, shaky laugh, the kind people make when they're buying time. "Oh, that must be a system glitch or something. I'll check on it." Check. One word. Thin as paper. Worth less than air. I didn't respond. I didn't give him room for more excuses. I simply hung up. I couldn't listen to another lie dressed in the tone of a son pretending to care. The next morning, I drove to the small legal office at the church, the one where volunteers helped seniors sort through documents, wills, and paperwork. Rachel Torres had helped me after Laura passed away. She didn't know my family, but she knew the law, and she knew how to read the kind of truth people try to hide on paper. I placed the stack of documents on her desk. Emails, bank statements, screenshots of Madison's purchases, 3 years of transfers, text messages demanding money, receipts linked to my identity. Rachel sifted through everything slowly, carefully. I sat across from her silent, still watching the face of someone who understood the difference between a mistake and a crime. After a long minute, she looked up. Her voice was quiet but firm, the kind that made the room feel colder. "Henry, this isn't helping family anymore." I didn't move. I waited. She continued with each word hitting the table like a flat palm. "This is elder financial exploitation. And the fact that your SSN was used, that falls under federal offense." I nodded, not in surprise, just in acknowledgement, as if the truth had finally caught up to us both. Rachel set a second stack of papers in front of me. "Henry, if the IRS looks into this, they won't go after Ethan or Madison." I blinked. "Why not?" "Because the accounts are under your name. In their eyes, you're the one who subscribed. You're the one receiving income. You're the one responsible for unpaid taxes." The words slammed into my chest harder than I expected. Me. Responsible. For their lies. For their greed. For their digital business I didn't even know existed. Rachel went on, gentle but unflinching. "If you don't intervene, you will be the one carrying the legal burden for your son." A thin crack opened inside me. Not in my heart. In my illusions. I took a breath. "Rachel, do I need to call the police?" She studied me, searching my face, maybe weighing my readiness for the truth. Finally, she said, "You don't have to call them yet. But you must document everything. Every message, every call, every receipt, every email, every withdrawal. IRS doesn't respond to emotion. They respond to evidence." Evidence. The one thing I could rely on. USPS taught me that a package is only as real as its tracking number. A letter only exists if there's a stamp. A claim only succeeds if there's a signature. And now, those rules were about to save me. March 2024. A white envelope with a red border sat in my mailbox. Those who've lived in the U.S. long enough know exactly what that looks like. IRS correspondence. I placed it on my kitchen table, sat down, opened it slowly. Verification request. Income review. They were asking me to confirm income from digital marketing services. Income I never earned. Income my son generated using my identity. I laid the letter flat. Looked at it for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sadness. Not even fear. What I felt was something sharper, cleaner, steadier. The silence of a man who knows the only way forward is to fight. I started doing exactly what Rachel asked. I saved every message from Madison that demanded money, even the ones disguised as sweet reminders. "Henry, don't forget to send it early this week." I recorded every phone call with Ethan. Perfectly legal in Colorado, one-party consent. I downloaded 3 years of statements. I printed suspicious transactions. I saved screenshots of Madison's TikTok videos where she flaunted items purchased with my money. I logged every lie Ethan told me. Date, time, context. Then I sorted everything into 3 folders: transactions, messages and recordings, identity, and digital services. I didn't look at the folders with guilt or regret. I looked at them like a man building a shelter before a storm. Not because someone else needed protection, because I did. And because my son, blood of my blood, had put me directly in the storm's path. Early April, the second IRS letter arrived. Not a verification, not a request, a warning. Notice of potential investigation. I held the paper in my hand, feeling the slight texture of government-issued stock. In the corner stamped in blue Federal Review Division. This was no longer a misunderstanding, no longer something I could sweep aside. This was the U.S. government telling me someone has crossed the line. And if you don't speak, we will assume it was you. And for the first time since all this began, the thought came to me clearly. If I didn't protect myself, I would die with my son's crimes tied to my name. I folded the letter, placed it on my desk, opened my leather notebook, and wrote April 2024, IRS approaching. Game starts now. It wasn't anger, it wasn't a threat. It was a declaration. Quiet, measured, precise. The kind a man makes not when he's lost everything, but when he's finally ready to take everything back. Spring 2024 arrived in Denver with the kind of leftover winter cold that refuses to leave. The snow had melted into thin puddles along the sidewalks, but the air itself still carried a stubborn chill, the kind that stayed on your skin long after you stepped back inside. But even that lingering cold was nothing compared to the cold settling in my chest as the year unfolded. I stepped out of Dr. Klein's sports medicine clinic late one afternoon, my gait uneven from the old injury in my right knee, the one from a slip on ice back in 2018. Dr. Klein had been following my case for years. He knew my history. He knew my pain patterns. Which is why the sigh he let out that day, a slow, heavy exhale, told me everything before he said a single word. Henry, he began looking down at the MRI results. You've got to reduce your stress. His tone wasn't dramatic. It wasn't meant to scare me. But it was sharp, the tone a doctor uses when the truth can't be softened anymore. The inflammation is getting worse, and stress makes it significantly harder for your body to recover. At your age, you don't have as much margin as before. At your age, people say that phrase like it's a cushion, but it lands like a stone. I nodded, thanked him, and walked out into the cool afternoon air, the paper containing my MRI results folded neatly in my coat pocket. But I knew exactly what kind of stress was eating away at me. It wasn't my health. It wasn't my age. It wasn't the weather. It was 2 people, Ethan and Madison. That same afternoon, Madison showed up at my house. No warning, no courtesy call, not even a proper knock, just a few lazy taps on the door, before she let herself in like she already owned the place. She walked in with the posture of someone who believed the world and everything in it was already hers. Her beige trench coat hung perfectly on her shoulders, and the handbag she carried probably cost more than my monthly expenses. Henry, she said, with a tone thick with manufactured sympathy, you look tired. You just came from the doctor, didn't you? I didn't answer right away. I just held her gaze. She looked away first. People who intend harm rarely meet the eyes of the person they're trying to deceive, especially when that person is older, quieter, and far more observant than they assume. I'm fine, I said simply. Madison brushed her perfectly curled hair to one side and leaned against my kitchen counter like she'd been rehearsing this moment. You know, she began, assisted living facilities are really good these days. They take care of everything: medication, meals, housekeeping. Older people actually live longer when they move into places like that. Her voice was smooth, persuasive, practiced. Not the tone of someone worried about an elderly father-in-law, the tone of someone closing a deal. I stayed silent. She continued, crossing her arms. You're living alone in a big house like this. It's a waste. And, well, you're not always as sharp as you used to be. Not sharp. Not fully aware. Her words weren't random. They were calculated, testing the narrative she planned to build. Henry is declining. Henry can't live alone. Henry should be moved. Move Henry. Take Henry's house. Ethan's inheritance accelerates. I watched her talk, watched the way her eyes flicked around my kitchen, not with concern, but with evaluation. Ethan and I just want what's best for you, she added. And this house, well, it could be better taken care of if we managed it. That wasn't a suggestion. That was a claim of ownership. I didn't react, didn't argue, didn't correct her. Sometimes silence tells you more about a person than confrontation ever could. And Madison's reaction to my silence, a flicker of irritation across her face, told me everything I needed to know. 2 weeks later, I received proof, not from Ethan, not from Madison, but from someone innocent. Noah, my grandson. He'd been assigned a school essay, Changes Coming to Our Family, this summer. He left a draft in my garage after helping me fix the lawnmower. I found it tucked under a pile of old towels. The handwriting was unmistakably his big, uneven letters, the kind of writing kids have before life teaches them to hide their thoughts. One sentence made my breath stop. When Grandpa moves to the nursing home, we'll finally get his house key. Finally. Not maybe. Not if. Not someday. Finally. As if it were a long-awaited event. As if my home, the one I maintained, paid for, repaired, shoveled, protected, was already theirs. I read the sentence again. And again. Not because I couldn't believe it, but because I needed to absorb the full truth. Madison had planted the idea. Ethan had accepted it. The children had absorbed it. The entire family had internalized a timeline, a plan that ended with me removed, and them holding my keys. I folded the essay and placed it in my metal tool cabinet, locked it, pocketed the key. Some truths needed safekeeping. The final confirmation came in late April. My neighbor Helen, the same woman who'd shared Thanksgiving dinner with me in 2023, knocked on my door. She wasn't the type to gossip. She didn't involve herself in drama. So when she held my hand with quiet urgency, I knew something serious was coming. Henry, she said softly, I heard Madison on the phone out in your driveway the other day. I didn't speak. I let her continue. She said, the house will be ours soon. Not might be, not should be, not we hope so. Will be. I thanked her. She squeezed my hand, the gesture lingering a silent expression of sympathy deeper than words. When she left, I stood alone in my living room. The living room Laura and I decorated in 1998. The walls still held our family photos, yellowed slightly from sunlight. Memories frozen in frames that no longer reflected the truth. Every picture felt like a warning: love cannot protect you from greed. Then, in early May 2024, the last line was crossed. Wells Fargo sent me an alert: attempted login from unknown device. Someone had tried to access my savings account. An account only. I used with a password only I knew. I opened my leather notebook, turned to a blank page, wrote a new entry, they're accelerating. Time to close every door. That same week, I took every piece of documentation, every folder, every copy, every screenshot, and went to my local Wells Fargo branch, the same branch I'd used for 30 years, where the tellers knew my name, where they used to ask about Ethan when he was a boy. But this time their faces changed when I explained why I was there. I need to remove Ethan from every form of access, I said. Every account, every beneficiary status, every authorized device, every transfer permission. The young woman helping me paused halfway through typing. May I ask the reason, Mr. Walker? I looked straight into her eyes, calm, steady, fully aware. Because someone is trying to take something that doesn't belong to them. She nodded. Didn't ask anything else. Some sentences don't require elaboration. It took nearly 2 hours to unwind everything. Authorized users, backup beneficiaries, linked devices, automatic transfers, joint permissions Ethan had set up years ago just in case. When she was done, she printed a packet thick enough to rival a pharmacy receipt. I signed at the bottom, a small signature. But it was the first signature in a chain of actions that would dismantle every plan Ethan and Madison had spent months building. As I walked out of the bank, the wind hit my face cold, sharp, almost refreshing. In my mind, a sentence formed with frightening clarity. They wanted to put me in a nursing home, but instead, they just put themselves in checkmate. After my 70th birthday, the house felt quieter than it had in years. Not peaceful, not calming. It was the kind of silence you hear just before an earthquake, the heavy humming stillness that tells you the ground is gathering power beneath your feet. For 3 years, every Friday morning at exactly 9:00 a.m., I woke up, made coffee, sat at the small kitchen table Laura once polished every Sunday, and sent Ethan $750. It had become routine, a habit, a reflex almost like taking my blood pressure medication. But on October 17th, 2025, I broke that habit. 9:00 a.m. The kitchen was drenched in the soft Colorado morning light. I opened my banking app. The numbers glowed on the screen, a history of supporting a family that had stopped supporting me long ago. My thumb hovered over the transfer button. Just one tap. One familiar tap. Instead, I clicked the side button. Screen off. Transfer canceled. It felt like closing a door. A very old door. In the quiet that followed, I whispered to myself, barely audible, it's over. Only 30 minutes passed before the phone lit up on the counter. The name on the screen. Madison. Of course. It was never Ethan who called first. The engine of that household, the strategist, the manipulator, was always Madison. I answered. No greeting, no courtesy. Just her voice, sharp, clipped, slicing into the silence. Transfer didn't go through. 3 words. 3 words spoken like a command, and behind them the slightest tremor of genuine fear. I replied with the same calm I used to deliver bad news during my USPS days. That's right. A beat. Barely a breath's worth of silence. Then her tone hardened instantly, like metal cooling into place. Do you understand we have bills, Henry? You can't just stop sending money. I looked out the window. A small sparrow had landed in my yard, hopping lightly across the grass, utterly unconcerned with family drama or financial expectations. That tiny moment mattered more to me than anything Madison was saying. I just did, I replied. Madison inhaled sharply, like someone holding back the urge to scream. You're making things difficult. We need that money. Your family. You have responsibilities. No. I cut in, calm, cold, unshakable. I don't have any responsibilities to you. She let out a laugh, a brittle, high-pitched sound overflowing with contempt. Do you even know what you're doing? You're 70. You shouldn't be making decisions like this. Thanks for the advice, I said, and hung up. Some conversations need to be that short. About an hour later, the phone buzzed again. This time, Ethan. I let it ring 4 times before answering, just long enough for him to panic. I hit record. His voice exploded through the speaker, already ragged with anger. Dad, what the hell is wrong with you? I told you we need that money. You can't just stop, I didn't respond. I wanted the recording to capture every furious breath. Ethan kept going. Madison is stressed out because of this. I'm dealing with everything alone. You can't even do one simple thing and send the money. No concern for me. No question if I was okay. No acknowledgement of my birthday the week before. Just anger over a missing transfer. Finally, I said, I'm not sending any more. Ethan instantly switched tones, the voice of a grown man collapsing into the whining of a child denied a toy. Dad, please, don't do this. We're struggling. The school called about tuition. The kids need things. Madison's depressed. Just help us for a few more weeks. Please. I could hear the performance. I'd raised him for 40 years. I knew the difference between his real pain and the lines Madison fed him. No, I repeated. Then came the crack. The breaking point in his voice. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't shout, didn't argue. I just told the truth. If your family falls apart because you're not getting $750 a week, then it was never a family at all. And I hung up. The recording saved automatically. October 20th, 2025. 3 days after the money stopped. I was tightening the handle on the garage door when a violent pounding rattled the front door. Bang, 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 not knocking, attacking. I walked to the entrance. Through the frosted glass, I saw Ethan on the steps, face red, fists clenched. Madison stood behind him, arms crossed, wearing a rage so sharp it could cut concrete. Ethan shouted, "Open this door! Dad, open it now, I didn't unlock it." I raised my voice just enough I'm not hiding from anyone. Madison pushed forward until her face was nearly against the glass. You're acting like a child. Stopping the transfers without warning. Do you know what that does to us? I don't care, I said. That sentence stunned her, as if the idea of someone not caring about her needs was physically impossible. Ethan slammed his palm against the door. Warned you, I told you IRS was investigating. This is your fault. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thick envelope, then hurled it onto the porch. Papers scattered across the concrete. One page landed near my foot. Press. Notice of potential investigation. I looked up. Ethan expected fear. He found none. Madison hissed, "You should be grateful we haven't turned you in. You caused this mess. You owe us." I answered, "I don't owe you anything." Ethan slammed both fists against the door so hard the frame shook. Open the door. The noise echoed down the street. A neighbor's dog barked hysterically. Helen, the elderly neighbor who'd shared Thanksgiving with me, came out onto her porch. "Henry, are you all right?" Ethan spun toward her. "This is a family matter. Go back inside." Before Madison could say more, a sharp siren grew louder from the end of the block. A Denver PD patrol car slowed in front of my house. 2 officers stepped out. We received a disturbance call. Ethan tried to smooth his hair, plastering a fake smile. "It's nothing. Just a family argument." I opened the door. stepped out beside the officers. "I'm fine," I said. Then I looked straight at them, calm, steady, absolute. "But they are not welcome here." Madison's jaw dropped. Ethan froze. The officer nodded. "Sir, ma'am, you need to leave the property now. If you refuse, we'll have to escalate." Madison's face contorted rage, humiliation, disbelief, all bleeding together. She bent down, grabbed the coffee cup she'd been holding, and threw it against my driveway. Crash! The shattering echoed across the street. Brown liquid splattered across the concrete like a stain of anger and desperation. They got in their SUV. Ethan slammed the door so hard the car shook. The tires squealed as they sped off, leaving a trail of burnt rubber and broken ceramic behind them. When the patrol car left the street, returned to stillness. I knelt, picked up each IRS paper, carefully stacking them neatly, because chaos from others never meant I had to invite chaos into myself. The October wind swept through my collar, cold but clean. It felt less like winter and more like relief. I locked the door behind me, all 3 deadbolts. Then I stood in front of the hallway mirror. The face staring back at me was old, lined, tired, weathered by years of storms. But the eyes were sharp again, alive, focused. And for the first time in years, I wasn't looking at a man being drained. I was looking at a man who had finally cut the cord. A man who had stopped the bleeding. A man reclaiming his life. I whispered a promise to myself, not a threat to them. They didn't lose my money today. They lost me. And as those words left my mouth, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was only the beginning. November rolled into Denver with a kind of cold that cuts right through your face and settles in your bones. The sky was a heavy metallic gray, the kind that makes the whole world feel like it's holding its breath. Early winter has a strange way of revealing the truth about people. Cold doesn't lie. It shows you exactly who has a coat, and who's been pretending they did. Ethan's household didn't have a coat. All they had were Bill's debt and the quiet tightening grip of consequences. November 1st, 2025, 9:12 a.m. I received a call from the IRS. The man's voice on the other end was precise, professional, carved clean of all emotion. "Mr. Henry Walker, we're calling to verify the final details regarding digital marketing transactions under your name." I answered with the steadiness of someone who'd had months to prepare. "I've already sent every bank statement, every recording, and every message. I can confirm I did not initiate or authorize any of those transactions." He replied, "We received the full documentation from Ms. Rachel Torres." Very thorough, very clear. I looked out the kitchen window. The morning light was thin, almost shy, barely touching the frost on the grass. "Good," I said quietly. Then he added something that let me exhale for the first time in weeks. "We're forwarding the case to the Financial Exploitation of the Elderly Division. The responsible party could be facing federal penalties." I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to know which agent would interrogate Ethan or how Madison would try to lie her way out. I said only one word, "Thank you," and hung up. That afternoon, Rachel stopped by my house. She carried a thick folder under her arm, thick enough to change the direction of someone's life. Her expression was serious, but relieved. "I turned everything in," she said. "I expect the IRS to officially open the case within a few days." I nodded. She placed an envelope on my kitchen table, the kind of envelope lawyers only give when they're 100% sure of their work. "Henry, I want you to know something. This is one of the cleanest, most logically documented cases I've ever handled. You've done everything right." I looked at her and answered, "When they insulted me, I stayed quiet. When they took my money, I endured it. But when they used my name to commit a crime," I paused. I stopped being quiet. Rachel gave me a small, approving smile. "You shouldn't be." November 2nd, Ethan's first blow. Helen heard him yelling in his garage. She texted me the details later. His phone had lit up with an email from Marketing Tech, the company where he'd applied for a senior consultant position. It read, "We regret to inform you that due to concerns regarding personal conduct and integrity, we will not be moving forward with your application." Integrity concerns. I imagined the look on his face, the shock of seeing his own behavior finally reflected back at him. It was like the first warm gust of wind in a freezing storm. November 3rd, another hit. Brian, the neighbor with the sharpest ears on the block, knocked on my door. Henry, HR from that company, called around for a background check. They saw the fake cry video Madison posted and the IRS chatter. They canceled everything. I only said I'm not surprised. November 4th, PTO delivered their own blow. Franklin Elementary sent Ethan and Madison an email. "You are required to attend an emergency meeting on November 6th to discuss behavior negatively impacting the community and students." Negatively impacting the community. Those words weigh more than they seem to. Helen later told me that Madison burst into tears reading the email. Ethan slammed his fist on the kitchen table so hard she heard it through the wall. I opened my notebook and wrote, "At last, they must answer to people who once believed them." November 6th, the fall accelerates. I was making coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Helen Madison just got fired. I turned on the television not to watch, just to have some sound in the background while I read the rest. The spa sent her an official notice. They said her online behavior damaged the company's image. No business wants customers seeing that video. I imagined Madison walking into the spa, her coworkers avoiding eye contact, the manager calling her into the office. The slow, painful walk back out to her car, mascara-smudged hands shaking. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. But I felt something close to balance. A woman who built her life on image had finally been crushed by her own image. That is justice, not revenge. Justice. That same day, Ethan's biggest blow yet. The IRS sent him an email confirming a case has been opened for potential identity misuse and financial exploitation. Helen heard his scream all the way from her house. "No, no, no, this can't be real." I lifted my coffee mug, opened the kitchen window, let the November wind pour in. And I didn't hide it from myself. I felt lighter. Not thrilled, not vengeful, just released. Like a weight I'd been carrying for 40 years suddenly slipped off my shoulders. By November 7th, Ethan was desperate. He called HR departments for 3 different companies trying to salvage his job search. Every call ended the same way. "We cannot proceed due to publicly available information regarding a family dispute and IRS concerns." No company wants an employee with an ethics question mark, especially not in marketing, a field built entirely on trust and reputation. That evening, Ethan slammed his car door so hard the window almost cracked. Madison stood beside him, mascara-smeared hands trembling. They were collapsing. Not because of me. Because of the lies they built their lives on. November 8th, the final income stream disappeared. Brian told me first Ethan just got dropped from his freelance project. The client read about the IRS situation. They canceled immediately, right before the deadline to respond to the IRS. No job, no interviews, no referrals, no way out. That night I opened my notebook and wrote, "They believed I wouldn't survive without sending them money. But when I stopped, it turns out they couldn't survive." Afterward, I stepped outside. The Denver night wind swirled dry leaves across the walkway like a quiet storm. The sky felt heavy, the air sharp. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I whispered softly enough that only the dark could hear. This is justice, my way. November 10th, 2025 arrived draped over Denver like a heavy blanket. The kind of gray that weighs on rooftops, sidewalks, and people, the kind of sky that tells you something ending is only moments away. I sat in my living room, the warm glow of a single lamp spilling over the papers in front of me, my new will. I read the first page again slowly, the way a man reads a document that closes one life and begins another. 100% of Henry Walker's estate is to be transferred to the Laura Thompson Scholarship Fund for financially struggling students at Denver Community College. No mention of Ethan, no sole beneficiary, no blind hope, no illusions of family as it once was. It was clean, final, and for the first time in years, mine. I placed the folder neatly on the table, poured myself another inch of hot tea, let the steam rise and disappear into the room, and then, as if the universe had been waiting for the ink to dry, I heard it. Tires screeching against pavement, a door slamming, heavy footsteps pounding across my front walk. Then Ethan's voice ragged, furious, unhinged. Madison's heels striking the concrete like gunshots. I sighed. A quiet, resigned sigh. I'd known this night would come. Just didn't expect it to come this quickly. Then bang, 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 bang. Ethan roared, "Dad! Open the door now." His voice cracked, not the voice of a 36-year-old father of two, but the voice of a drowning man, grabbing for anything, anyone. Madison's cold, sharp tone sliced in right after. "You think you're smart. Old man, you ruined our lives. Open this door right now." I didn't answer. Didn't rush to the door. Didn't even stand. I wanted them to hear it, the sound of their own chaos echoing back at them. Their shouting, their panic, their unraveling. The door rattled hard as Ethan pounded again. Madison screamed, "If you don't open this door, I will break it." And she tried. She lifted her leg and kicked the heel of her boot, slamming into the wood. The glass rattled, and then, like the final note in a song I'd heard before I heard the police siren. Not rushed, not frantic, just routine. The third time in a month that a patrol car had stopped outside my home. 2 officers stepped out. Flashlights cutting through the cold evening air. One pointed his light at Madison. "Ma'am, step away from the door, now." Madison spun around, teeth clenched. "This is family business. You don't have the right?" The officer didn't blink. "You're damaging private property. Step back. Last warning." Ethan swallowed hard, trying to regain control. The rage in him had curdled into something darker. Desperation. Fear. That's when I finally stood, walked to the door, and opened it. Not in a hurry. Not trembling. Not afraid. Just steady. The soft hallway light spilled across my face as I stepped forward. And there they were, the boy I raised, and the woman who believed she could rewrite our family. Both of them dependent on the money of a man they treated like a burden. I asked, voice low, steady as steel, "What do you want?" Madison lunged first, spitting anger. "We want the money, the weekly transfer, the bills, the payments. I got fired because of you. You ruined everything." I didn't respond to the accusation. I simply asked, "And what about you, Ethan?" He stepped forward, face red, eyes wild, the look of a man cornered by life itself. "Dad, you can't do this. You can't just stop sending money. We need it to survive. I didn't offer comfort, didn't offer apology, didn't offer softness. Those days were gone. I turned, walked back inside, and returned with the document I knew would shatter them. My new will. I handed it to Ethan. Read. He opened it. Madison pushed her head over his shoulder, and then it hit them. Hard. Madison's face drained of color as if someone had pulled a plug and let her soul pour out the bottom. She read aloud, each word drenched in disbelief and fury. All assets transferred to the Laura Thompson Scholarship Fund. She screamed, "What, you gave all your money to some stranger?" "Instead of your own son," I answered calmly. Laura wasn't a stranger. She was one of the students my wife taught. My wife believed in her. So do I. Ethan crushed the edges of the paper in his hands. His voice cracked. "Dad, you can't do this. I'm your son. Your only son." I met his eyes. For the first time, he saw the truth. I wasn't the fragile old man he thought I was. "You told me my age meant nothing," I said softly. "Well, now my money means nothing to you." Ethan froze. Madison recovered first. She screeched, "You're psycho! You're going to regret this, I swear!" The officer stepped forward, voice sharp as handcuffs. "Ma'am, one more threat and you're going in the car." Madison glared at me with pure venom. "You'll die alone, Henry. Alone. No one will remember you." I smiled, not in spite, not in victory, but with the calm certainty of a man who knew he had done the right thing. "Don't worry," I said. "The students benefiting from my scholarship will remember me just fine." The officer placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." Ethan looked at me one last time. Eyes swollen, face trembling, like a child abandoned at a bus stop. "Dad, you can't just leave me." I answered with the quiet truth. "You left me first. I'm only returning the silence you taught me." Ethan pressed both hands to his face. His shoulders shook. His whole world had collapsed, and he finally realized it. Madison grabbed his arm and dragged him away. But before she turned fully, she spat one last sentence at me. "You'll pay for this." I shook my head. "No. I already have. For years." The officers escorted them to their car. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud, a sound that felt like the final closing of a chapter long overdue. The patrol car pulled away. Their silhouettes disappeared. Silence slipped back over my front yard like fresh snow. No yelling, no threats, no fists pounding on my door. Just the wind passing through the trees, soft, clean, honest. I stood there a moment longer, breathing in the cold evening air. I had once believed I would break if I ever had to sever ties with the son I raised with everything I had. But that night, I didn't feel broken. I felt light, lighter than I had in years. Because sometimes, losing someone is the only way to finally find yourself. November 12th, 2025. A cold, dry Denver morning. The sky stretched in a thin gray sheet like a scar the winter hadn't finished healing. I woke earlier than usual. My hands still trembled a little from everything that had happened the last 2 days, but my chest felt light, a feeling I hadn't known in years. On my kitchen table sat an envelope waiting for me. White, simple, marked in the corner with the logo of the Pine Ridge Community Association. I opened it. just 2 sentences. After the meeting on 11/11/25, the board has unanimously voted to require Ethan Walker and Madison Walker to vacate the community by November 30th, 2025, due to repeated disturbances, resident harassment, and threatening behavior. I placed the letter on the table, took a long breath. Not joy, not vengeance, just inevitability. The natural end of choices they made. No one in Pine Ridge wanted them here anymore. No one believed their lies. No one wanted to stand shoulder to shoulder with two people who had exploited a father for money and torn this quiet neighborhood apart. The bill for deceit always comes due, sometimes late but always on time. Near noon, I walked out to check the mailbox. Sandwiched between grocery catalogs and store flyers was another envelope. This one mattered. Sender Internal Revenue Service, Denver Field Office. I opened it slowly. Every line struck like a hammer on an already cracked foundation. Confirmation letter: Ethan Walker is hereby assessed for back taxes for 2023-2024. Penalty $14,800. Due date December 5, 2025. Failure to comply may escalate the case to a federal criminal review. Years ago, a letter like this would have made me shake, would have tightened my chest, would have felt like the world falling in on top of me. But now I simply folded the paper and placed it in the file where it belonged. I warned Ethan. I gave him every chance to stop. I did everything a decent father could do, just like Laura used to remind me. But you can't save someone who refuses to stop drowning you in the process. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let consequences speak for themselves. Late afternoon, the school called. A counselor's voice, calm, steady, gentle. Mr. Walker, we've begun counseling sessions for both Noah and Sophie. Noah is under a lot of pressure. Sophie is showing signs of anxiety. I closed my eyes. I had anger toward Ethan, disgust toward Madison. But never, not for a second, did I wish pain on those kids. I asked, what can I do for them? The counselor replied, just stay in contact. Let them know they're not alone. That's enough for now. I nodded even though she couldn't see it. Thank you. I hung up and sat in silence for a moment. There are some things you never bring into a battlefield. Children are one of them. I didn't know how Ethan and Madison would explain any of this to their kids. But I knew one day when the kids were old enough to understand, they would look back and see clearly who acted with dignity and who didn't. Near dusk, another envelope arrived, the kind of letter a person hopes to receive once in a lifetime. Cream-colored, soft handwriting, slightly slanted to the right. From Emily Reyes, recipient of the Laura Thompson Scholarship. I opened it. Dear Mr. Walker, my name is Emily. I'm 19. I just received the scholarship in your wife's name. I want to tell you, I never imagined a stranger would believe in me this much. My mom passed away last year. My dad works 2 jobs. I didn't think I would be able to continue school. But because of you, for the first time in a year, I feel like I have a future. Thank you. And thank you to Mrs. Laura, even though I never met her. I promise I won't waste this gift. I paused at the last line, a line that held me still for a long moment. My mother was the kind of woman who would have believed in the vulnerable the same way Mrs. Laura did. I placed the letter on the table, and something warm, small but real opened inside me. Laura, you would have loved this girl. As night came, I drove to the cemetery where Laura rests. The Denver air was sharp, almost metallic. I set a handful of white chrysanthemums at the base of her headstone. Sat down. My back stiffened, my knee cracked. The body's reminders of age never stopped talking. I touched the cool stone. Laura, it's done. I told her everything. About Ethan, about Madison, about IRS letters, and the scholarship in her name, and the girl who wrote to thank her. The pine branches above us rustled gently. I said what I'd carried for months. I found myself again Laura. Not the man Ethan wanted me to be, but the man I was meant to be. I stood slowly, placed my hand on the stone one last time. I'll take it from here. When I returned home, the neighborhood was wrapped in quiet. The porch light glowed soft, steady, almost patient. I made tea, sat in my chair, looked out across the empty living room. And just like that, November 12th, 2025 ended in the quiet I had been waiting for all these years. No more fists on my door. No more screaming. No more weekly payments tightening around my throat like a vice. No more pretending to be the perfect father. Just me. And a life I rebuilt with my own two hands. And if you're still here listening to my story all the way to the end, I want to say this. Leave a comment. Tell me where you're watching from. Each comment is a witness for every forgotten parent out there. If this story made you pause for a moment, hit like so others can hear it too. And if you want to follow the rest of my journey, subscribe. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Henry Walker.